Hello Year 8. Today we're talking about circumference of circles. Now last lesson we learned about perimeter, which was adding up the side lengths of our shapes to find the total distance around a shape. Now circumference is really doing the same thing. We are trying to find the distance around the outside of a circle. And it's just that we have a special name for it when it's a circle. So instead of calling it perimeter of a circle, we call it circumference of a circle. So let's read through these notes here. The circumference, which we're going to be calling C, is the distance all of the way around the outside of a circle. Now we're going to need to talk about diameter as well. Diameter, which is little d, is the distance across a circle that passes through the center. And you can see that down here in this circle. So you can see the d that is going all the way across from one side of the circle to the other, passing through the center. And next we need to know the radius, which is little r. The radius is the distance from the center of the circle to the outside of the circle. And one more thing, pi, which is this symbol here. It's a Greek letter, which we call pi. It is used in all formulas that involve circles. There is a pi button on your calculator, but it is approximately equal to 3.14159. Pi is actually an infinite decimal that continues on and on and on forever without any repeating pattern. So to draw a pi symbol, the way I do it, is I do a wavy line across the top and then two straight sticks coming down from that. That's the symbol pi. Okay, so there's two formulas that we're going to use to find the circumference of the circle, and the formula that you use will depend on what you're given in the question. If you look at your question and you can see that you've been given a radius, then you're going to need to use this formula. Circumference is equal to 2 pi r, because r stands for radius and we're given the radius. If you look at your question and you're being given the diameter, you need to use the formula C is equal to pi d, d for diameter. Okay, now before we jump into finding circumference, let's just practice finding or identifying radiuses and diameter and some of the terms that we need to know. So question number 1 here in the example. Correctly show the following on the circles provided below. So first of all, a radius, r. So the radius is from the center of the circle out to the edge, so like that, little r, that's the radius. A diameter goes from one side of the circle through the center. Oh, that didn't go through the center very well. Try that again. To the other side, that is the diameter. The circumference is the distance the whole way around the outside of my circle. So tracing over the outside of that circle, that is the circumference that we call C. And the center of the circle is that dot that's in the middle. So there's no symbol for center, so we'll just write the word there, center. That is the center of the circle. Okay, so question number 2, we want to find the circumference of these circles. So part A, I'm given this length here is 5 meters. Now because it's from the center out to the edge, that is the radius, which means I want to use the radius formula, which was C equals 2 pi r. Okay, so I'm given the radius, so I want the radius formula. So I just need to substitute in that the radius is equal to 5. So that means C is equal to 2 times pi times the radius, which is 5. Okay, just put times signs between each of those things. Remember in algebra, when things are all next to each other, it means that they are multiplied. Okay, and the next thing to do is to use your calculator to work out what that is equal to. So here is the calculator. So we go 2 times, now to get pi on your calculator, you press the shift button and then this times 10 down the bottom, and you'll see the pi symbol come up. So 2 times pi times 5, and press equals. Now, because that pi is always such a big long decimal number, every time you do a question that involves pi, you are going to have to round your answer. So this question asks us to round to 2 decimal places. That means I want the 4 and the 1, and I need to round off after that. Because it's a 5, I'm going to have to round that up to be 31.42. 31.42, and the units are meters. Okay, so they're the 3 steps that I'd like you to show. First of all, write down the correct formula. Second, write down the substitution into the formula. And third step, write down the answer correctly rounded and with the units. Okay, let's do part B. This time we've been given the diameter because it goes the whole way across the circle. Now the formula, when we have the diameter, is C equals pi d. Okay, so that's the first step. Second step is to substitute into that formula. My diameter is 20, so I'm going to say pi times by 20. And third step is to calculate that. So I go pi, so shift with the times 10 button, times by 20 equals, now to 2 decimal places, that will be 62.83. And that is in meters. Done. Now, most of the questions that you do, I want you to be using that pi button on your calculator. But occasionally, they ask you to use an approximation of pi in the question. So instead of using the pi button, this question here says, use the approximation of pi to be 3.14. Okay, that's close to the value of pi. It's a rounded value for pi. So it's not exact, but it is pretty close. So it wants me to use that value to calculate the perimeter of this circle. So all that means, I'm going to start very similar to what I did in the last question. Because I'm given the diameter of this circle, I need the formula that involves diameter, which is C equals pi d. Okay, then I want to substitute into that formula. Now, because I'm not going to use the pi button this time, I'm going to use that pi is equal to 3.14. I'm going to substitute that in as well. So pi is 3.14, and I times that by the diameter, which is 100. Okay, times that by 100 gives me 314 centimeters around that circle. Okay, question 4 says find the perimeter of the following. Now, the reason we're calling these perimeter is because these shapes don't only involve circle or circular edges, we also have straight edges. Now, if I want to find the perimeter of these shapes, I'm going to have to add the curving edge with the straight edges. Okay, so we call that perimeter. Now, I'm going to have to use the formulas for circumference though, because the C equals 2 pi r and C equals pi d, they are the only way to find the length of these curving parts here. Okay, but I don't have a whole circle. This first question, I only have half of a circle. This 18 is the diameter, so I'm going to use the C equals pi d formula. But because I only have half of a circle, I'm going to put a half in front of that formula because I have half of pi d, half of a circle. I also have an extra side on there. That formula there is going to tell me how long this part here is, but the perimeter has to also get closed up with this straight side across the bottom. So I'm also going to have to add on the 18 for that straight side. Okay, now instead of calling it circumference though, because it involves straight side, I'm going to call that P for perimeter. Let's substitute into that formula. So I had a half, Then I'm going to times that by pi. I'm going to use the pi button on the calculator again. And I times that by the diameter of my circle, which is 18. Then I also have to add on the straight side, which was 18. And third line is to type all that in the calculator. So I have half, so we can type in 1 over 2, or you could just go 0.5 if you're trying to save yourself some time. Half times pi times 18 plus the straight side 18, and we're going to stick to 2 decimal places here, 46.27 centimeters. And that's done. All right, let's try part B. This time I have a quarter of a circle. Now this 2.3 that is here would actually be the radius of the circle. If you can imagine, this is the center and the rest of my circle would go around like this. Okay, so that 2.3 is actually the radius. So that means to find the perimeter of this shape, I'm going to have a quarter of a circle, and the formula is a quarter of 2 pi r, because that's the formula that involves the radius. I'm also going to have to add on the straight sides. Now there are 2 straight sides that are both 2.3, so you can go 2.3 plus 2.3, or if you want to make it a little bit quicker, you can just go 2.3 times 2, because there's 2 of them. Second step is to substitute in for the radius. So we have a quarter. There should be a little times in between there. So quarter times the 2 times the pi times the radius, which is 2.3, plus the 2 straight sides, so 2.3 lots of 2. Okay, then on the calculator, a quarter, so I want to be sneaky and just type that in as a decimal, 0.25, times that by 2, times that by pi, times that by 2.3, then add on 2 lots of 2.3, making the perimeter 8.21 centimeters. Okay, there's a few more of these on the next page. To find the perimeter for question C, I always like to start with the curved part of the shape. So here's my curve. That is half of a circle. So that means I'm going to have perimeter equals half times by, now, am I going to use the radius formula or the diameter formula? This 12 here goes the whole way across the circle, so it would be the diameter. So I'm going to use the pi d formula. So half of pi d, that's the circle part. Then I have to add on all the straight sides. Now because they all have this line marking, they're all going to be 12. So I would have 12 down here, 12 across the bottom, and 12 up the other side. Or in other words, 3 lots of 12. Second line is substitute in the diameter. So half times by pi times by the diameter, which is 12, plus the 3 sides that are 12. And calculate. So half times pi times 12 plus 3 times 12 makes 54.85 centimeters. And part D. Now, if you can imagine the whole circle being cut up into 4 pieces, we want 1, 2, 3 out of those 4 pieces. In other words, we have 3/4 of the circle here. So perimeter is going to be 3/4 times by, now that 6.3 would be the radius, so I want 2 pi r. So 3/4 of 2 pi r, that gives me the curve. Then I have to add on the straight sides, and they would be both 6.3. So 2 lots of 6.3. Second line, substitute in the radius. So 3/4 times 2 pi times 6.3 plus the 2 straight sides. And calculate. So 3/4 times 2 times pi times the radius of 6.3 plus the 2 straight ones is 42.29 centimeters. And that's it.